Feeling the back of the skull, the shoulder blades, and the sacrum. And breathe into the ribs, side to side, front and back. So really trying to create that space for the breath. Feeling that expansion all the way around the rib cage. And just notice how as you exhale, the ribs come in closer toward each other. Keeping that triple S, we're going to pick up the right foot. Take either the right hand or the left hand to the right thigh and just resist. So you're trying to push that right thigh away, but don't let it move. And then step the right foot down. Keep that triple S as you pick up the left foot. Either hand to the thigh, and let's resist. Push away, but pull the thigh back into the hand, and keep alternating. So as we do this, we're warming up the hip flexors. We're already getting the core warmed up by stabilizing the pelvis and spine. So we don't want the low back to arch or lift off the ground as we do this. We really want to hold that neutral spine and pelvis as we start to activate the hip flexors. Now, if you want to lift the hips a little bit, more like a single leg bridge, you can lift the hips up if that would feel like a good challenge for you, but keep resisting the hand into the thigh, thigh into the hand. Good, both feet come down. We'll set it for bridge, again, feeling the shoulder blades, the back of the skull, and the sacrum. Push your feet into the mat like you're trying to push the ground away as you lift into low bridge. Feel that those two pelvic points are drawing in, so that tissue between those two pelvic bones is tightening. Hold that pelvis still. Try to alternate lifting one heel at a time. So now we have to use the help of the hamstrings as well as the glutes a little bit more to stabilize so that the pelvis isn't rocking side to side as we lift one heel at a time. So we're kind of summoning the whole back line of the body to stabilize here, pushing into those big toes. Good, heels lower down. Let's tiptoe the spine down one vertebra at a time until we feel that triple S. And we'll interlace the hands behind the head, elbows in, and let's take a breath into the sides of the ribs. Exhale, feel the ribs draw in toward each other, draw those pelvic points in as you lift off the shoulder blades. Let your head feel heavy in your hands, so we're leaning the head back a little bit, not pulling on the neck. Inhale to lower. Exhale, pelvic points draw in, lift off the shoulder blades, draw those front ribs in like you're tightening a corset. Gaze is between the knees or the legs. Inhale to lower. One more like that. Exhale, lift up, and then we'll add pelvic points draw in. Feel your belly button try to pull down toward the ground. Staying off the shoulder blades. Inhale and lower. Adding on, exhale, pelvic points draw in, lift up, feel the front ribs knit in toward each other. Turn just the chest 1 inch to the right, staying off that right shoulder blade. Take your left hand over toward those right ribs and just drag them in toward center. So really telling those obliques to kick on. Hand comes back behind the head as you come to center. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lift up, pelvic points draw in, belly pulls down as we lift off the shoulder blades. Knit those front ribs in, turn 1 inch to the left, stay off that left shoulder blade. Right hand comes over toward the left ribs, drag them in toward center. Hand comes back behind the head, inhale to lower down. Let's release the hands, take a big breath as we pick up the right foot, circling the ankle in both directions. And then bring the hands to the front of the pelvis. Hold it still as we circle this right hip. Circling both directions. Hold that pelvic bowl still so it's not wiggling around. We'll flex the right foot, crossing it over in external rotation for our figure 4. Now let's make sure we haven't arched the low back here. Sacrum is still on the ground. Front ribs are down. Maybe the right hand comes to the right thigh if that feels good, to push the thigh away a little bit. Checking in with your breath. Can we still feel the rib cage expand in all directions? Release the right foot down, pick up the left foot, circle the ankle both ways. Hands to the front of the pelvis, circle the hip, but hold the bowl of the pelvis still, so we're not rocking the low back side to side. Flex your foot, cross it over figure four. Feel that triple S, maybe left hand pushes the left thigh away. Let's feel the breath expand all the way around the rib cage, front, side, and back. Release it. Let's hug both knees in. Take a little rock side to side or up and down along the lower back. And we'll come into a seated position. Sitting however you'd like. We'll be here for just a little bit, checking in with our stack, ears over the shoulders, shoulders over the ribs, ribs over the pelvis. Let's bring the hands forward and really spread those fingers out nice and wide, pushing the heels of the hands forward. So getting as much wrist extension as we can. Start at your pinkies, lower down the pinkies, and then the fourth finger. We're lowering one finger down at a time into a fist, thumbs crossed in front, pulling those knuckles back in to flex the wrist. Take a breath in and out. Circle both ways. And then again, palms forward, spread those fingers and wrist extension. Try to move one finger down as far as it will go before the next finger wants to move. When you get to the thumbs, we'll pull the knuckles back, which is wrist flexion. Take a breath in. And exhale completely. Circle both ways. Coming into a quadruped. So we're coming onto hands and knees. We will spend a good amount of time on our hands today because weight bearing on your hands is a great way to really kick on that entire core, which is everything from glutes to shoulders. Let's lift the front of the throat. So make sure the ears aren't dropping below the shoulders. Finding that neutral spine as if we had a broom behind us, touching the back of our skull, shoulder blades, and sacrum. Right toes slide back. Keep the toes on the ground for a moment and really think right glute. Be prepared to give that right glute a little squeeze as we float the right toes off the ground. Bend the right knee. So we're going to do our glute or hip pulses here. Tiny little movement. Really firm or squeeze, engage, tighten, however you want to think about it, that right glute to extend the hip. Now we're trying to keep everything else still and just move here in this right hip. So we're working the entire core to stabilize the spine, but we're also working that right glute, which is part of the core. So lots of core going on here, holding the spine from just drooping down against gravity. Right knee comes down, make any adjustments here. Let's recheck our neutral neck, scapula, and pelvis. So we don't want to be tipping forward or arching the low back here. Slide the left toes back and keep them on the ground. Make sure the front ribs are up a little bit. And then think left glute. Use that left glute to float the toes. Bend the left knee for those hip extension pulses. Tiny little pulses here, like we're trying to get the back of that left leg up toward the ceiling. But it might not even move half an inch. That's okay. We want to do this while we draw those pelvic points in. Hold the arms straight and strong. Keep lifting from the front of the throat. Lower down to quadruped. Let's take a child's pose for a moment. Just give the wrists a little bit of a break. You can roll your wrists. You can stretch them out. And let's really feel that breath expand into the side and back ribs while we're in child's pose. Good. Heading back into our quadruped. You're also welcome to be on fists here if you want to give the wrist a break. But let's cat-cow here. So as we inhale and arch the back, extending the spine, we probably will get a little bit of pull in the front line of the body into those abdominal muscles. It's a nice little stretch there, and then rounding the back to get into the back core muscles, a little stretch there. Mobilizing the spine. Let's pause in our cat position. So that rounded back, our spinal flexion, pushing the hands into the ground, letting the neck release. Tuck the toes, cover the knees here in this cat, and then continue to lift the hips all the way into down dog, keeping the weight in the arms. Walk the feet in, soften the knees. So we're in our down dog, lifting the front ribs up, almost like we're trying to lift the armpits up. And let's pedal the feet out here. Big bend into one knee at a time. Stretching the heel down to get a little bit of length in the calf. But keep the arms nice and active, so we're not letting the chest drop through or the head drop through the shoulders. We're staying nice and lifted in the ribs. Big bend in your knees. You can take the feet out a little bit wider as we walk the hands back into a happy squat. Big bend in your knees. Let's rise up. Find our neutral position here. So we want to find that stack. Ears over the shoulders, shoulders over the ribs, ribs over the pelvis. Pick up the right foot. Either hand comes to the thigh, just like we did on our back. Let's resist. Try to push the thigh down, but don't let it move. So we're pulling back into the hand and then step it forward. Pick up the left foot. Resist with either hand that can reach the thigh. Push down. Step it forward. Pick up the right foot. As you try to push that right thigh away, notice how that left glute might kick on a little bit more to stabilize. And then step it forward one more time. Pick up the left foot. Resist. Getting those hip flexors activated. Getting that right glute nice and strong. And then step it forward. All right, let's reach the arms forward and up. Lift those shoulder blades up. Exhale, hinge at your hips. Hips move back. Huge bend in the knees. We're heading into quadruped. So right onto hands and knees. If you needed to be on fists, that would be okay here. Shoulders over your wrists, toes tucked. We'll inhale. Exhale, hover the knees up without rounding the back. So it's a really low hover, just barely off the ground. And then lower the knees. Let's do that again. Inhale. Exhale, hover in your quadruped without rounding the back or puffing up the upper back or spreading the shoulder blades. Lower the knees, one more. Inhale. Exhale, hover the knees without rounding the back. Lift the front of the throat. Lower the knees. Good. Cat, cow a couple times. You can have the toes tucked or untucked, whatever feels good. Let's step the right foot forward for our 90-90 low lunge. Left knee slides in a little bit. Lift up, and again, let's check that stack. Would that broom touch the back of our skull, shoulder blades, and sacrum? We'll do one hand at the back of the pelvis, one hand at the front. Tighten that left glute so that back glute is really active. All we're going to do with this front hand is just pull the hand back and up a little bit. So we're just trying to pull the tissues back in toward the spine and then up toward the belly button. That's going to help a couple things to find that neutral pelvic bowl, nice and upright. Also to tell those muscles at the front of the abdominals to go back and in to stabilize. And then we're also getting that pull of the tissues, which helps to open the front of that left hip a little bit more. So just using our hands to help out. Good, hands come down. Three-legged quadruped, right leg back. And let's pause here. We're going to flex the right foot so that our toes face down. And it's going to be important that we keep our toes facing down for this. Keep the front of the throat lifting. Press evenly into both hands. Nothing changes, but we abduct the right hip. So the right leg moves slightly to the right, but toes continue to face down, and then we bring it back behind us. Working the outer hip now, also part of the core. And we're just going to keep going, abducting out to the side. You can go super slow. But let's really feel that the bowl of the pelvis is not shifting side to side. So it's not so big that anything in my low back or the rest of my spine is moving. It's just this right leg, drawing those pelvic points in. Lower it down to quadruped, and we'll do that all on the other side. So the left foot steps through, right knee slides in, lifting up. Let's feel that triple S. We've got ears over the shoulders, shoulders over the ribs, ribs over the pelvis. Right glute is engaged. One hand to the front, one hand to the back. Let's take those front hands, so they're kind of right under the belly button. Pull back toward the spine and then slightly up. You might not be able to feel it. Whenever I do that, I get a bigger stretch in the front of my right hip just because tissues are moving around. Keep drawing those pelvic points in. Breathe into the side and back ribs. Hands come down. Three-legged quadruped, left leg back. You could be on fists if you needed to. Let's make sure the ribs are lifting, pelvic points are drawing in. Toes continue to face down as we abduct the leg to the left and back behind us. So it's a really small movement. It really might be a couple inches. So don't expect it to go really far forward toward the side of the mat or anything. It's a really small movement. It's a movement about stability rather than a big looking movement. Holding strong in the arms. Try not to puff up between the shoulder blades. Lower down. You can take any option that feels good. You could tuck the toes, lift into a down dog and pedal it out. You could take child's pose. You could shift it back into a cat-cow and stretch there. We're going to walk it forward into our bent knee forward fold. So wherever you are, bend those knees, walk it forward so we're in that bent knee forward fold. Spine is long, we're not rounding. Push into the feet, reach those arms forward and up. Shoulder blades lift up, but the tailbone reaches straight down. Exhale, hinge, hips move back, torso comes toward the thighs, quadruped, hands and knees. Option to be on fists if you need to. Find that triple S, not letting the ears drop below the shoulders. We'll tuck the toes and do those hovers. Inhale. Exhale, pelvic points draw in, hover the knees. Now imagine those front ribs knitting in just like we would in our core. Inhale to lower. Exhale, knees hover, but lower is harder. So we're not lifting way up toward a down dog. We're staying super low. Inhale and lower. One more time. Exhale, hover the knees. Think about zippering up the whole front of the body. Inhale to lower. We'll step right foot forward into a low lunge. Left toes will tuck under this time. Same 90-90 lunge. You can either clasp your hands or make fists and just have some tension in the arms. If they're too loose, they're pretty likely to just make our turns or our twists look like this instead of being structured. So whole core is working, left glute is on. We'll inhale as we face the center. Exhale, turn just your ribs toward the right. Inhale back to center. So holding the frame of the arm strong. Exhale, tiny rotation to the right. And you're going to keep going. So we want to sink it to the breath. It's always going to help us rotate with the core's help, because as we exhale, all those core muscles are tightening anyway. So some of our core muscles really do help. Their job is to rotate the spine. So this turn is coming from deep in the belly. Good. As we come back to center, left hand comes down. We're headed to modified side plank. So our left knee will slide in toward the left hand. Right foot steps straight back toward the center of the back of the mat. Push the ground away with that left hand. So we want to feel really stable and secure in this left shoulder so that the top of our shoulder isn't wiggling around at all. Really secure. Zipper that front body up. Hand can stay at the hip. You can keep the back foot down or float it up. If you'd like to add a little bit more challenge for the core, we'll do a little bit of this abduction we just did in quadruped. So the right leg just does a tiny little lift and lower, working that outer right hip. So that's one of our gluteus muscles, our glute med on the side. Also part of the core. Keep pushing the ground away with that left hand. Then lower the hand, lower the knee, back to quadruped. Other side, left foot steps through, 90-90 lunge, toes will tuck under this time. Feel that that pelvic bowl is upright, so not tipping forward. Good, zippering the pubic bone up to the belly, either fists together or hands clasped, but strong arms. Inhale as you're facing the center. Exhale, ribs draw in, we rotate left. Inhale back to center. Exhale, rotate, using the obliques, which are those side abdominal muscles. Inhale back to center. Exhale, rotate, firm that right glute. So we're only rotating around the ribs. We're not having any of the turning in the low back. So we're stabilizing the lumbar spine and the pelvis and moving above it. As you come back to center, modified side plank, right hand under the right shoulder, right knee slides in, left foot steps back toward the back of the mat. Push the ground away with that right hand, pelvic points draw in. Picture that corset tightening around the ribs. Left hand can stay at the left hip. Maybe we float the left foot off, but hold that right shoulder still. Maybe we abduct, adding that little pulse. Only pulse if you can hold the rest of the spine still. So we're truly getting that whole core here from the glutes and pelvic floor all the way up to the shoulder. Lower to quadruped. Any option, you can cat-cow. You can take child's pose. You can tuck the toes and take down dog. Good, let's walk the feet forward. Bent knee forward folds. Push down into your feet, rise up. Reach those shoulder blades up. Exhale, hinge. Plant the hands, quadruped for our hovers. Wow. We can keep doing the exhale to hover. Inhale, lower. That's an option. If you want to exhale and hover, you can try to crawl forward and back. So it looks kind of silly. It feels kind of awkward, the crawling, because we stopped doing it once we're not kids anymore. But it's fantastic for the core. It's good for your brain. You could do it higher up in a little bear walk, but it's harder than it seems to coordinate moving the hand and leg, like which one goes where. So brain loves novelty. Try it out sometime. Doesn't have to be today. And we'll meet in quadruped. Good. Right foot steps forward. We're going to slide the left knee in and come all the way to a standing lunge. So lifting off that left knee and then rising up, finding our neutral position here. Would that broom touch our triple S? Hands will stay here as we tilt forward. So my torso is coming toward my right thigh, but the right knee isn't going forward. The right hip is going back. So it's like we're trying to fold in half, which is hinging or flexing at the hip. Push down into that right foot and lift the torso back up using the core. So as we tilt forward, we're using the core to stabilize the spine so that we don't just collapse against gravity, and then pushing into the foot to lift back up. So our first option is to stay with this. This is a lot of work already, so you can definitely stay here. If you want a little more challenge, as you tilt forward, maybe the left toes float up into a bent knee airplane, and then shift back into your lunge. So just an option. You don't have to try it today. So we're working again, really focused on the core, our stabilizing core here, helping to stabilize the spine as we move. But we are using the glutes as our mover and stabilizer core muscles with this movement. One more time, whichever option you're doing. Hands are going to come all the way back down for quadruped. So left knee lowers, right knee comes back into quadruped. This will be another choose your own adventure. We'll start in the same spot. So from our quadruped, we'll lower onto the right forearm and then the left forearm. So now we're in forearm quadruped. Core stays engaged. Bring the right hand down. Coming back into quadruped, left hand down. So back into quadruped, arms are straight. Right forearm down. Left forearm down, forearm quadruped, right hand down, left hand down, quadruped. So if you do want to add on right forearm down, left forearm down, once you get to forearm quadruped, maybe we add a little hover of the knees and then lower, right hand down, left hand down, quadruped, maybe we add a hover. Let's do one more of any variation you're doing, heading to forearm quadruped, and then back to quadruped. Switching sides, left foot steps through, high lunge is where we're heading, right knee slides in, lift up, find that neutral here. So pelvic bowl is upright, it's not tipping forward, it's not tipping backwards. One hand to the skull, one hand to the sacrum. Tilting forward here, our left hip is moving back toward the back of the mat as the torso comes forward, any amount, lift the belly away from that left thigh. Push down into that left foot, lift you back upright. Tilt it forward. So we're hinging or flexing at that left hip. Spine is staying long, so don't think about getting down low, because that would probably round the back if you're trying to get toward the ground. We're trying to feel like we've got as much length as we can from our tailbone through the crown of the head as we do this. So we don't want to round the back or roll the shoulders forward. One more time, drawing those pelvic points in. Back to quadruped we go, hands and knees come down. We're going to do that same thing, but we'll do left side forward every time. So left forearm down, right forearm down for quadruped. Stay or add your hover. Left hand down, right hand down, quadruped. Maybe we hover. Any pace, you're just alternating left, right, but stabilizing in a forearm quadruped or dolphin, if we were to hover the knees up higher, is a great way to work the core, since our shoulder stabilizers, or our scapula stabilizers, are also part of the core. Some of our core muscles go all the way up into the upper back. So we're really working this weight bearing through the shoulders, your hands. Good, that was the last one. You can either head to down dog, head to a child's pose or a cat-cow. Maybe pedaling the feet out if you're in down dog. Let's walk it forward, bent knee, forward folds. Push into your feet. Let's rise up. And then hands come down. We're just going to turn to either side of the mat and come into a squat. So our toes are turned out, knees are bent, our hips are externally rotated to whatever amount feels comfortable. And let's check in with that pelvic bowl here. So not tipping forward, not tucking under, nice and upright. Keeping the pelvis the same, hands come behind the head. So we're going to get into some of those other deep core muscles at the sides and even at the back. So we're going to side bend to the right, but we have to use our core to do this since we don't have a hand down. Keep pushing your feet into the ground and then come back up. Side bend to the left. So you have to use our core to control this descent. We're not just flopping over and then coming back. So we're just alternating right and left. Also, a lovely stretch for the side body. All the way up to those intercostals between the ribs. So move at any pace, but we're staying really strong and stable at the base. So our lowest core muscles are working to stabilize, and some of those side and upper back core muscles are working to move the spine. Come back up. We'll stay facing the side of the mat, but we'll turn the toes forward so feet are parallel. You can have the hands at the sides of the pelvis or front and back. We're going to do a different type of side lunge today. So we'll side lunge to the right, sit the hips back. So sitting back slowly, push into that right foot. We're going to try to step our right foot next to the left. And then step it right back into that side lunge. So right foot steps out. We've got to control that descent as we send that right hip back and then push into the ground, step the feet together. So we're only going to go to the right side this time. Push into the foot, come back. So as we sit back, we're doing this with control, holding the pelvis and spine stable, not rounding, not collapsing. And if you want to add a little bit more of a challenge as you step together, you could also add a little flexion of that right hip and then step it down and then into your lunge. So you can think about kind of trying to land quietly with that right foot. That would be really using your core to stabilize. So we're not slamming into the knee. Last one. Good, we're just gonna switch sides. We're staying facing the side of the mat, but we'll do the left foot. So left foot steps out to the left. Good, with control, and then start with just the step in. Step the left foot to the left, side lunge left, feet come together. So try that at least 3 times before you add that left hip flexion, if that's what you want to add. We're moving as if we had that broom taped behind our back. So would even the head make contact, or is the head dropping down too low? Use the core to step out quietly. Good, last time, side lunging to the left. Shake it out, let's come to quadruped. Little cat-cow here, or if you want to circle instead, you could do those belly rolls or torso circles, however you prefer to call them. Moving in any way that feels good. Really getting into the back, side, and front fascia and muscles. Let's head into a seated position. We'll do a little side stretch here, checking that triple S, right arm up, lift that right shoulder blade up, side bend to the left, so don't worry about getting low here. Think about reaching through those right fingers, just as much reach as you can get. The left hand can always come down if that feels good. So again, we're really breathing into the right side of the ribs, getting a little length in the tissues there. And switch, left arm up, lift that shoulder blade, reach it to the right, and reach those fingers as far as they can go in whatever direction they're reaching. Breathing into the left side of the rib cage. And release it, close the eyes, hands can rest anywhere. Breathe into the ribs, front, side, and back. One more breath like that. And as you exhale it out completely, send one grateful thought out into the universe.